bad. Well, all right, guys. Of course, it is a. I got some weird light coming at me here, but we'll just go with it here. I don't know what's going on, but it has something to do with this gloomy, rainy Sunday that's going on out. Well, it's not Sunday, but Saturday, and you know what time that is when it's all gloomy and rainy and stuff. It's time to talk about comics. And I don't know what's going on with the camera here. I got some weird light going on, but we'll just kind of go with it, man. Hey, what's going on? So, I was driving around. Hey, what's up? Epic Trilogy, what's going on? All right, everybody's popping in here. We'll just get our coffee and we'll just talk about comics a little bit. Then I'll see what's going on with this camera later. Some weird exposure throwing me off. But anyway, so one of the things that I was like driving around, I drove around a lot for work. The last couple of weeks have been unreal to where I'm staying home this weekend. I bought some new records. They're on my Instagram and my Facebook. You know, I'm Howler Mouse on Instagram if you want to check that out. So I'm going to be loading up some records. I'm going to be cleaning up this comic book room. I'm actually going to be reading. I've been reading a lot of comics. And as I was reading some of these comics and stuff, I started thinking about yesteryear. On this channel, I talk a lot about comic book history over the years, you know, with the actual comics and behind the scenes and stuff. And every now and then I realize we're kind of living history of what's going on. Oh, Matilda Gothka, I hope you're joking about the Mr. Gold comment there. That's funny. I loathe this Mr. Gold. Oh my God. That was funny. But one of the things I realized is like when we're kind of like living in comics, comics have changed. I think the last live stream I kind of talked about a lot of comic book fans dropped out of DC Comics when Crisis on the Infinite Earth was over, you know, and I didn't really get it, you know. And then there's been a lot of people that have just kind of walked away from the scene of comics, newer comics and stuff, because of everything that's going on. Oh, no, Matilda, it's okay. It was funny. And but you know, there used to be a thing in comics where you would see something called a Marvel zombie. Now, the last time I used the term Marvel zombie was probably about a year or two ago, and some guy just came after me online like this was like a derogatory term. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. But back in the day, probably like up in the 80s and 90s that I can recall, Marvel Zombie was a term of endearment from Marvel Comics to its fans. There were people, and I'm just kind of wondering if they're still out there, who only collected Marvel Comics. The reason that fad again. But the only thing that got me was about these Marvel Zombie fans is that around the 2000s when I started getting online on messages boards with them, the Marvel Zombies were people who only collected Marvel Comics. Anything and everything that came out of Marvel. And this came from going all the way back to the 60s where Marvel Comics introduced a continuity. You could read one comic book and have something referenced from another comic book. Doctor Doom could pop up in Fantastic Four, and then he could pop up in the Avengers and stuff, and they'd be like, maybe we should call Reed. So you had all these, for the first time in comics, you really had people referencing each other like they were in a shared universe. So, so that's what I'm talking about. So these Marvel Zombies would get in there and they would study this. They would actually like get anything Marvel and talk about it. And they were very loyal and they didn't collect anything else. Now, like I was saying in the 2000s, when I would be on comicbookboards.com and a few other places, I would introduce comics like from the Bronze Age, the 70s. Like pretty much to me, anything from DC Comics in the 70s that wasn't superheroes could almost be gold. That was their horror comics like House of Mystery, even the Swamp Thing, Commandy, The Fourth World. You go back and forth with those, or, you know, they had Superman in them, so you can go back and forth. But they started Kong the Unconquered. They started playing around and finding like these sci-fi titles and horror titles and things that were just kind of odd and stuff that they were just sort of like busting their head up thinking I've really wasted a lot of years collecting comics and I could kick myself because a lot of people on comicboards.com were seasoned collectors. One guy named Kev, K-E-V, that's all he called himself, was a dude. I think he was a music teacher up in Canada. And he collected Fantastic Four since Fantastic Four Annual 3 came off the shelves in the 60s. So for close to 40 years, he had gotten Fantastic Four off the spinner racks and stuff. Um, no, and I'll get to that. Matilda Goth got asked if it was characters drawn on zombies. So, sort of as an ode, to Marvel had this as an ode to the fans who were super loyal, and they were called Marvel Zombies. This is what they were called. They called themselves. Usually, when there's a fandom, they'll end up naming themselves after what they're fans of. Okay, so Marvel Zombies, the comic that came out in the 2000s, a series of miniseries that came out, was sort of an ode with that title to the fans of Marvel. And thus we had the Robert Kirkman books, the Marvel Zombie books and stuff. That's where the inspiration sort of came from, right? So over the last couple of years, probably really starting with Joe Quesada, kind of like starting to slowly abandon Marvel's continuity and it being pure shit in the last couple of years and stuff. Like where they're probably I don't know if you could really consider Marvel having a real continuity. They're just abandon everything. I've seen less and less people who are actually still considered Marvel zombies. Now I think they're endangered. I've seen people kind of at the comic book conventions and stuff, just going after back issues and stuff of Marvel and stuff like that. But the Marvel zombies I ran across at conventions and stuff, you had you guys who could talk comics. You'd be standing in line waiting to get a signature from, like, say, Sal Buscema. They seem to shit on them nowadays, on the fans. Yeah, yeah, that's part of the reason. Another reason I'm going to be bringing up about maybe why the Marvel zombies are extinct. So, are there really fans out there of only Marvel? Are there people out there who still just collect the Marvel comics like they did back in the day? I don't think so. And if they do, the people, I went through a mourning process, believe it or not, a grieving process for when I realized Marvel had completely changed and stuff. And I'm not lying, man, it kind of affected me for a year with this hobby. You go back to 1977 with me collecting this hobby, and all of a sudden it just sort of, I knew that without Marvel kind of spearheading things, leading the way they used to, and things like that, that it was going to hurt the industry in a whole, and it has. But the fandom is what gets me. The Marvel zombies that I would run to at the comic book conventions, there'd be every now and then I would run into what I refer to as an alpha zombie, right? These were the guys that were the stereotypes of what comic book fans were considered. The living in the basements, the poor hygiene, the out of shape, the weird guys that everybody thought you were. And they would be sitting there and they would talk like they were reading out of a book, and they usually had like this high pitched voice. They were just weird. I mean, I hate to say it, they were just weird people, and they were like 175 pounds of chewed up bubble gum standing there. So they turned around and the guy was sitting there. I tried to talk to one and stuff, but seriously, his hygiene was super bad. And he was sitting there saying, well, the Marvel Universe in real time would be 7 years, but we might have to adjust for 2 years because Franklin Richards is now in Power Pack. It's stuff like that. They would Frank. They would really like take a look at the kids that were growing up. People having the Fantastic Four got married and had Franklin Richards, and we saw them grow up and stuff. And they were really like doing the math, and they finally settled on 10 years of continuity stories that if Marvel Universe happened in real time, it was 10 years. And they really got into this. They would get in and they would reference a book from 1969. And they would also like talk about the creators like they were buddies and stuff. I once had read a blog about how Marvel Zombies went away in the early 1990s when Marvel started publishing 100 books a month and it was no longer affordable for fans. And that's why I'm making this video. Just what else has led to it and stuff. The big glut of books that were coming out. Now, to jump off what Jared said there about Marvel Zombies starting to die off because of Marvel publishing so many books and they couldn't afford to get everything, there is a theory that the actual Marvel Universe really died in 1991, 90 or 91. I was a senior in high school, right? And it was the way they handled death. Infinity Gauntlet came out, and Thanos had killed half of the Marvel Universe. Ah, they splintered. Okay, I'll get back to that. So they had this thing where death was no longer a serious event. It took away the drama, the realism to a certain extent of Marvel comics and stuff, because half the Marvel universe died thanks to Thanos and his glove, and they all came back. Now, Jared also pointed out that that's when fans sort of splintered off into X-Men fans, Avenger fans, Super Spider-Man fans. I think that actually sort of reflected in the books years later. Jared Osborne used to work, I think, in the bullpen at Marvel Comics in the 90s. So there was a decision in the late 90s where it sounded like the suits came in and they said we're going to split up the Marvel universe. And you had I think they were like the Edge books, and that was like Punisher and Hulk and some things. You had all the Spider-Man books and all the Avengers books and the X-Men books. They actually were in the house. Is that when Image started or shortly before? Image started, I think, in 92, maybe 91, 92. I actually remember I was in my first semester at a community college, and they had a break room outside of the cafeteria, and it had couches, a jukebox, a pool table, and a TV. And I remember a lot of people coming and finding me and bringing me in because CNN was announcing Image. They actually got to walk in and see all of them, all the Image founders lined up, and CNN was covering it. So it's probably around the same time, yeah. But you understand this is also when Marvel, these guys were the superstars. I mean, you had X Men #1 and Spider Man #1, one by Chris Claremont and Jim Lee, one by Todd McFarlane, sell like over 1 million books. You know, they were maybe more or something. It set a huge record. But so yeah, there was a lot going on at the time and stuff. But that was like within fandom, is what I'm talking about, with Infinity Gauntlet and the people starting to consider death a joke in there. Marvel was publishing 100 books a month just before and for a while after Image started. Nice. Okay. Now we got people sitting there talking, going down memory lane and stuff, right? And Jared Osborne is a guy who, if he's going to stick around, throw a question or two at him, man. He was actually at Marvel. You got me coming from the fan perspective and from reading the comic scenes and comic journal and things like that, and just remembering with the fans. Then you got somebody like Jared who apparently was actually like there working and stuff, right? So perspective makes all the difference. So yeah, so what we've got here now is that like it seems like it started splittering when Marvel really glutted the market there. Then Joe Quesada came on, and he kind of, I remember him making statements that kind of made me nervous. He brought in a lot of indie guys. You had Mike Allred on X Force, and some people coming in. I mean, I flipped out when they had Corbin doing a Banner Hulk, Roger Corman, Richard Corman. Oh no, I'm getting my movies and my comic books. Anyway, they had indie guys coming in. They were like doing little mini series, and books were taking off and stuff. And he kind of said that continuity sort of kept people from being creative, right? I will test the Splinter Theory. I exclusively purchase X-related titles from Marvel from 91 to 95. Yeah, that's what I mean. Fandom, you know, no longer was the Marvel zombie there. So we got it back all the way back to the 90s. I thought it happened around late 90s, 2000s, and especially the last couple of years that people could hang in there. But the Marvel Zombie was amazing because they were very active in letter pages in comics. I remember reading comics and stuff, and I started noticing the same people who seemed to have formed a relationship with the editors in the letters pages, to the point that I think it was Mark Grunwald came up with something called a no prize, and that meant that if you found an error in continuity in a comic book, you would send in an adolescent attention span. I love that. Yeah, make sure you check out some of the comments if you're watching the rewind on this, man. They're pretty good, man. But in the letters pages, you started noticing that editors had formed relationships with some people who would send letters in regularly. Mark Grunwald had a thing called a no prize. You would get an empty envelope, you know, but it was still that's why it's called a no prize. But basically, what it is you saw an error in continuity. You came up with a practical theory of what really happened. Why is, it's not really an error. Here's what happened, and you would get it. I think the no prize was earlier than Grunwald, but it revived it. Very good. I'm glad Jared is out there and stuff. Because the no prize is something that I only heard about through Grunwald with the age that I was kind of reading Marvel. I was never really a Marvel zombie fan per se, right? I was a DC guy all the way if I had to pick. Can two editors miss a spelling mistake? Yeah, yeah. And I think it's with any job. I think what it is that it's the amount of mistakes that really throw people off. Yeah, the amount of mistakes can throw people off, man. I don't think it's a big deal every now and then to have, one or two, you know, I don't know, typos in a comic or something like that. But, with my job, I'm a social worker, so I have to do a lot of documentation. But I think it's when it becomes the amount of typos that you can just tell it's real sorry. And that's the other thing. Well, I'll just go ahead and talk about that. I was going to lead up to it, but it's the quality of the Marvel books and stuff. Matilda Gothica brought up typos and stuff, right? And last couple years there, for a while, there was quite a few videos of people bringing up comic books and going through them. And it was one of the milkshake crew, if you will, basically her books, big time, that people were going through and they were finding horrible typos. The paper started getting thinner on the Marvel comics to where you could almost see through them on certain books. The quality of stories and stuff like that went downhill. The abandonment of the continuity and stuff. Everything that the Marvel fans suck their teeth in and stuff. And I think that's why it's such a shock with certain creators and their behavior on Twitter being a big shock to comic book fans when you had the letter pages in the old days where you kind of had a back and forth with the editors and started having a relationship with them. Kurt Busiek is the big one in my head. He actually ended up working. That's how he broke into comics, was through those letter pages. Been talking comics and things like that. That's kind of what broke him into the industry as a writer and stuff. Um, the last comic I read, a character said, "White old man, I wanted to headbutt a wall." Yeah, and that's what I mean. That's part of, take what you have there, that passion for comics, and if you cranked it all the way up to where you live, breathe, eat, and shit, Marvel comics, that was the big time Marvel zombies. Now, so I'm just kind of wondering, are they still out there? Are they endangered? Are they extinct? Because when I hear people talk about Marvel Comics specifically now, in I hear it with DC a little bit, not a whole lot. They're putting out too many books, not enough talent on them. Yeah, like pop records, man. They were just, some of the stuff was getting churned out. I don't expect every comic to be Shakespeare. Oh, I lost my train of thought, what I was saying. That's a live show for you. No idea what I was just saying a second ago. About the quality of books, and I had a shock. But oh yeah, yeah. But when I hear people talking about getting Marvel comics now, I like that Cayman X. That's cool, man. But when I hear talking to people about Marvel now, they come up with a book or two that sort of defends Marvel a little bit. Like they're like Daredevil. Daredevil's good. It's in its own little corner. Or this book's kind of good. Or a comic book will have like a good month. A run of comics will have a good month and stuff like that. And they really don't have, even though they're taking up for that book, there's still like this sadness with them where they kind of know it's a sinking ship. They just are sort of hanging in there, hoping that things will change pretty good. There's a lot of optimism there, but the present is killing them and stuff. But Daredevil seems to be a book that everybody kind of stands up and tries to say something about. Cosmic Ghost Rider is a character now that people are sort of digging, but I've just been around too long to enjoy a recycled concept or smashing two characters together that just make no sense and stuff, right? If people dig it, I don't want to bash it, but it's not the same. Matilda Gothica, why do they restart runs so much? Well, there's a theory out there that the reason, that's another thing that hurts with the Marvel Zombies. They like to have be able to go through that box and have all the numbers. You know what I mean? Have a big run of comics. But that's definitely changed. But one of the reasons they do it, it's pretty much a stunt to get a good quarterly report and a good fiscal year report. It's all about money and showing on the reports that Marvel's making money. Number ones will sell more than a number seven. You get what I'm saying? So they just kind of keep rebooting them to do that. That's one of the theories, and it kind of holds up. But yeah, it's a stunt. It's a stunt. Why they don't just say that these are going to be a series of miniseries and confusing people with all these volumes? I mean, seriously, what is it? There's like six Daredevil number twos now. If you come into as a collector pretty new, or even if you've been around for a while and you decide you want to collect a book, I can end up having a 12 issue run of Daredevil, and it could be from three different volumes, and I would never know until I started reading them. You know, I think Marvel's typo problem might have something to do with the longtime proofreader Flo dying a couple of years ago in bloody hell. But see, now Jared, that's one of the things I don't so much want to comment with and stuff like that. But one person, with all her experience and stuff, I get that she's probably like eagle eyed and stuff. But are you telling me that like people who go to school and they come in to be editors and stuff, there's going to be like 10 people that miss a typo. I mean, damn. Um, Flo's a legend and stuff like that. So I'm being real gingerly here and stuff like that. But yeah, I totally have been in. I'm sitting here thinking about it. I've been in workplaces where one person leaves and it took five people to take their job. I have seen that. Yeah. So okay, I get you. I can meet on common ground there with you. Yeah. So that's what I'm getting at. It's sort of like the comics. Are there anybody out there who just collects Marvel comics? Is there anybody that can take like the last 10 years of Marvel comics and come up with something coherent and continuity? Because that's what the zombies did. They loved it. They came up with a timeline if this is happening in real life. Hey, Count Von Strange, what's going on, man? You come in here kind of in the middle after I've went off. Yeah, editors miss typos all the time. That's why they had a proofreader or two. Gotcha, gotcha. Nice, all right. Yeah, Jared, we got to push Jared there to kind of maybe do a video if he hasn't already about the lifespan, how a comic is born, and all the people who put hands on it before it comes out. That would be very interesting. Not much. I'm just wondering if there's. Yeah, Scott Connors just jumped in and says, What did I miss?" Just kind of wondering if there's any Marvel zombies out there, the people who just collect Marvel comics the way they did and tied the continuity together and came up with a timeline and they were just real fanatic about it and stuff. We've already gone over a few things and had a few revelations and stuff, but it's just real wild that the Marvel zombies really might be extinct simply because of Marvel just abandoning their continuity. Oh man, okay, guys. Well, I've been on here for about 20 minutes. We got 17 people here. If you guys got any questions or anything, let me know. I'm probably going to be doing another live stream today. I just wanted to put this one out there just as a question, man, just to kind of get it out there. Wildstorm owned Tom Strong, and DC bought Wildstorm, so Moore had no say in DC using Strong. Uh, I noticed editors and new comics. There are a lot of them. Yeah, yeah. Now we're just talking about the ins and outs of comics. The only Marvel I'm interested in are the upcoming Conan books. Now that's a licensing deal, as most people know and stuff like that. One of the things that Jim Shooter said that really saved Marvel was the licensing they were able to do in the 70s. And those were the Marvel books that were sort of set out of continuity, and every now and then they might play a little bit with a licensing product. Like they had a huge um, sorcerer, evil, bad guy from the Conan books come to the Marvel universe. And in the X-Men in the 190s, he actually turned New York into the Hyborian Age. So you had the X-Men and the Avengers being magically transformed like they're in the Hyborian Age. Now we're getting into the DC should lift Trump. Okay, Tom Strong. Okay, now we're getting to Alan Moore and licensing and ownership and stuff like that. But the licensing that's going to go on with Marvel with the Conan books, I'm really nervous about. Just because as Marvel as a company has totally messed up, Miracle Man. Um, their Star Wars books seem to be kind of iffy, and there's like some kind of controversy around them all the time. That's the exact issue of the X Men that made me stop reading them. That's funny when they went Hyborian. I don't get a lot of enjoyment from Kurt Marvel's Silver Age and Bronze Age books and stuff like that. And that's what I mean. That's what I Count Von Strange before you popped in here. That's what I said a few minutes ago. The Marvel zombies that could still be the zombies. I'm always seeing at comic book conventions and stuff, and they're getting the back issues. They're going way back. They're filling in gaps and runs and stuff. And I'm kind of one of those guys. I'm spending so little money on new books and stuff that when I finally get to go out and do something or find a place like that, I mean, I went out and got a whole bunch of back issues of Hellblazer. You know what I mean? I mean, my last haul from Baltimore and stuff like that, I didn't really grab too many things that were spectacular. I'm filling in runs. If Garland Cook was alive and doing the Fantastic Four, I'd be first in line. Yeah, yeah. And that's just another thing that used to be with Marvel and stuff, man. The way they would be able to stick talent on books that just clicked and make those teams. Um, they made new Marvel Man, Miracle Man. Well, what I'm talking about with Miracle Man is that they got a hold of the original Eclipse run by Alan Moore, the original writer. if you will. And they're recoloring the books and they're putting them out and they're coming out with these hardcovers, collecting it and, collecting the storylines and stuff like that. But the thing about there's always been an issue. See, I'm taking the money I would normally use on new books and using it to buy keys and first appearances. That's what I've been talking about for a month. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I've been talking about for the last couple months on these live streams. How I'm constantly seeing people jumping back. All right, everybody's popping in here now. So we're just going to keep going. But jumping back to the licensing thing and stuff like that, after the way Marvel has just, you know, messed up Miracle Man, trying to get it out, there really are people who have been waiting for that very last issue that was never released for 30 years now, you know. Nah, Eric, I'm gonna stick around. We have too many people here and everybody's talking and stuff. So you got here just in time. We're just kind of going to switch topics a little bit. I'm just going to talk a little bit here. But anyway, when it comes to the licensing and things like that, Jim Shooter credits a lot of that for saving Marvel in the 70s, Star Wars and things like that. And then you had movie adaptations and all sorts of cool things in the 80s. And so for Marvel to be getting Conan back. Oh, I don't know, man. I mean, Dark Horse did some phenomenal stuff. Roy Thomas, Barry Windsor Smith, John Buscema. There's really only a handful of people that you can kind of. I think Kurt Busiek and Kerry Nor did some great stuff with the Dark Horse when they had it. I didn't read a lot of the Tim Truman stuff, but there's only a handful of people that have ever really made that book work, in my opinion. All the great inkers, Ernie Kahn, Alfredo. I mean, there's a lot of great inkers on the Savage Sword of Conan books and stuff that I think were just more as important as anybody else who ever touched those books. So them coming back and stuff, I want to be excited, but there's a big shadow over this, and then there's also how Marvel has messed up a lot of stuff. There's a theory going around, thanks to Jason Aronson. He was handed a script that the Star Wars plots come down from somewhere else through Disney. So now that was part of the thing that they're talking about now here. It seems that Dark Horse either cannot hold on to a lot of the licenses or they choose not to. I remember some licensing popping around with like Tarzan and stuff, back in the day and stuff. DC had it, and then Marvel had it. Dark Horse had it. I've seen Tarzan popped around. The Spirit is one I don't really understand if that's considered a licensed deal. I've seen them pop around to everybody. Doc, Doc Bronze. Oh, wait a minute. Doc Savage, excuse me, the Man of Bronze, Doc Savage and stuff. I mean, he popped back and forth all over all sorts of companies and stuff. So some of this stuff, I think there's a lot of behind the scenes contracts and stuff or something. I don't know. But it seems like Dark Horse to me is the one that's appreciated with when they get a licensing deal. Dark Horse to me seems like the one that people appreciate after it's gone. You know what I mean? After they lose it. Tim Truman Conan was pretty good, and Corbin even drew a couple of stories. Awesome. If you think Stevie is slow, try being a Mark Schultz fan. They're talking about Steve Rude and stuff. One of the things that a lot of Marvel Zombie fans did that I did get a kick out of, and I think everybody did it, but I heard it mostly with Marvel, was the thing that's kind of going on now. If Darwin Cook was on Fantastic Four, or Steve Rude was on Fantastic Four, there's a lot of dream books and stuff like that, dream teams to put on comics and stuff. Um, so there's probably another splintering of Marvel fans and comic book fans in general about how they follow a writer or an artist. You had John Byrne with his Byrne victims, and there's lately been a buzz about Marvel trying to get John Byrne in there, which I think would be a step back in his career right now. I think it would be huge. I would not go in there trusting them. There's a new Conan album series in France. Conan's in the public domain in Europe now. Holy crap! Oh no. Conan is in the public domain in Europe. Wow. I'm sorry, man. That kind of took my breath. Oh my God. That's crazy. All right, guys. You guys got any like questions or anything here? I want to open up some Reese cups. I didn't expect to be on here this long. Now, a minute ago, Scott Connor talked about Tom Strong and meaning like the Terrifics and the DCU and stuff. I have issue 7 where he pops up, I think it is. I haven't read it yet in the Terrifics, so we'll see what's going on. But Wildstorm being bought up by DC Comics, and they got their hands in Alan Moore while he's in the middle of his America's Best Comics run and stuff like that. I remember when that happened, and it was like I felt like I was on tiptoes waiting to see what was going to happen with that. Like, or is Moore going to keep the books going, or and he did because of wanting to keep all the people working on the books working. You know, he wanted them all to have the paycheck. That's one of the reasons he stuck around after DC bought up Wildstorm. But having Tom Strong come out in Terrifics in the DCU, I'm going to read how they handled it. Um, I'm kind of like Scott Connor on this one. It sort of feels blasphemous. But I'm telling you what, man, after what they've done with Watchmen and Doomsday Clock, before Watchmen, and all this stuff like that, I'm just not surprised anymore. All right. Apparently, there's a Paulo Costa is saying there's a Conan role playing game that was released a couple months ago in Europe, a couple years ago. Have I seen Steve Rude's World Finest? I have the hardback right here, and I have the 3 original series. This is what he's talking about, folks. Yeah, this is an amazing. Dave Gibbons wrote this. Steve Rude came up with some amazing art. He draws Superman in the style of the of the Fletcher cartoons of the 40s, and he's got a fantastic retro Batman. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that. All right, guys, we're at the 30-minute mark. I'm gonna get off here and drink some coffee and do a few things. There will be another live stream later today. Share this, like this. In a perfect world, we'd have a regular Space Ghost series drawn by Steve Rude. Hell yeah. A better way to end this stream with a comment like that. Share, like it, thumbs it up. Get it out here, and I'll see you guys later today sometime. Hit the bell because I'm going to be doing these at random and stuff. I have days where I'll do streams 2, 3 days in a row, and then all of a sudden I'll just have one just pop up when I wake up sometimes. Later, guys. Thanks for hanging in there. Diet Coke greater than coffee. Oh, Eric.